Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing the 26th film to be released as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Eternals. And since this is I guess, it's new solo team movie, I think, I should probably talk about my history with the characters prior to seeing this movie. And like with a few other heroes before them, I don't really know that much about the Eternals. I mean, in the Marvel comics that I have read that they've featured in, I've learned a little bit more about them. I learned that they're cosmic level heroes. They're apparently from Titan or something, though this movie says that's not the case. They're tied to Thanos. Apparently he's a brother to one of them who's actually a superhero. They apparently, and I know that they were created by Jack Kirby and that Neil Gaiman brought them into the Marvel Universe proper with a miniseries, which I want to read that as well as the original series Jack Kirby wrote about them, but I've never actually read them yet. They're on my list and I've seen them on bookshelves, but I've just never bought them. So, my knowledge of the Eternals is minimal at best. I know who they are. I know they're a superhero team, that they're, very powerful beings, but like I said, that knowledge is limited, to say the least. So, when I heard that they were going to be making an Eternals movie for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I thought, okay, that sounds kind of cool. And after they said that they were going to make that a movie, my interest was not really that much piqued after that. My reaction was just, okay, that sounds cool, and then that's just where it stopped. I saw they had a cast of characters and actors to play the roles of the Eternals. I saw that I know that Eternals was set to be originally be the 25th film they released, but then COVID happened, so they pushed it back, and Shang-Chi became the 25th film, and as a result, and honestly, even with the film being delayed, my interest just kind of was middling at best. Even the trailers of the film didn't really impress me. They didn't make the film look bad, but it wasn't blowing me away either. It just kind of looked like your standard Marvel superhero schlock. So I was just kind of like, okay, this doesn't look bad. This doesn't look bad or terrible. Doesn't look great either, but I'll probably still see it since it's an MCU movie, and as a result, I wasn't really excited to see it, but at the same time, I was also still curious about it. For all I knew, it could still be a great movie. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks. Then the film got a early international release, and the reviews came in, and put simply, they weren't kind. Apparently, the film was just getting lambasted by critics, and it wasn't doing well, but at the same time, the Marvel Studios were still trying to keep the hype train going for the film, and so they were still advertising it on social media and events, etc. And when the film did officially come out, fan reactions were actually the opposite of critics' reactions. The fans seemed to be loving the movie, and in its opening weekend internationally, it grossed a lot of money. And even when it finally got a release here in America, it was actually doing well, and a lot of fan reactions to it that I saw online were very positive. People really loved the movie and wanted to see it. So that actually made me more curious about it. I was thinking, why is this film so polarizing? Why do critics hate it, but viewers love it? Is there something about it that'll annoy me? Is there something about it that I'll love? I don't know. But what turned to middling curiosity turned to higher curiosity. I didn't know whether I was going to be excited and blown away or disappointed and let down. So when I first saw the movie a couple weeks ago, I didn't really know what to expect. And, well, after I watched it the first time, my reaction was just kind of, huh. I didn't think it was great, but I could see why a lot of fans really loved it, but I could also see a few aspects of the film that I could very easily see could make critics not like it. But now again, I saw the film twice, of course. I obviously had to see it again tonight, so my opinion could obviously change after a second viewing. So, has my opinion changed? Is there things about this movie that I missed that suddenly make me think it's amazing? Or do I agree with the critics and think that that deserves 2 thumbs down? Well, let's find out. So, and again, fair warning, as you can tell by the timestamp, this vlog's going to be kind of long, and at the time that I'm recording this, the film's been out for only 2 weeks. So if you haven't seen Eternals yet, as always, there are going to be spoilers, and a lot of spoilers. I'm not going to be skipping over any kind of plot point. Anything that's important, I'm going to talk about, including major plot twists and character revelations. So if you don't want the film spoiled for you, turn back now. Otherwise, you will not be spared. Are we good? Are we good? Okay. So of course, let's get to the long-ass plot summary. As you know, based on the title of the movie, the film is about a group of alien beings called Eternals. Essentially, they are servants of a great god called Arishem, the prime member of a race of exceedingly powerful aliens called the Celestials. The Celestials are responsible for essentially all life across the universe. They create, essentially, their immense cosmic power allows them to create suns, which in turn form the other natural forces of the universe, like gravity, light, heat, etc. And from that, planets form, and the eternal cycle of life and death continues on. And however, part of their little whims of the universe involve facing off against a race of predatory aliens that they call the Deviants. Right? These hideous monsters that exist on various planets whose sole intent is to just kill people, eat them up, consume and destroy everything in their path. So to combat them, the Celestials have the Eternals from a planet called Olympia. Essentially, whatever happens is that whenever a planet is infested with Deviants, they send a small group of Eternals to the planet to essentially fight off the Deviants and protect the local populace. And so that's where this film takes place, with a group of Eternals going to Earth, I'm not going to mention all their names up front because it's a team movie, so they're going to be introduced later on, and I'll name them all off each time. But essentially each of them have different powers, different personalities. They're all different people, and like I said, their primary mission is to defend Earth, the people of Earth, from the Deviants. And for many centuries, that's what they do. And pretty much every time Deviants attack a large group of people, the Eternals come in and just fight them off and protect the people and keep them safe. Get them into places where they can prosper, and in some cases, help them along, help them advance and grow, and so forth. But unfortunately, one of the primary rules of the Eternals is that while they have to defend humans from the Deviants, they unfortunately are not allowed to get involved with any human conflicts. So like any wars or minor scuffles that they witness, they have to just pretty much go hands off of, even if they don't want to. And unfortunately, as time went on, this did start getting to the team, especially as internal strife started happening with certain members, until eventually one day, after they thought that they killed all the Deviants, the leader of this group of Eternals, Ajak, a woman who has the power to essentially heal anyone that she wants, including herself and her team, pretty much told the group, go out, disband, you don't have to stay with me, go out into the world and find your own destiny, and one day I'll seek you out and see how you're doing. And from there, and after that, the team pretty much went their separate ways. Some members stayed together or eventually split apart. Some people went to try and live their own lives, try and fulfill their dreams, and just for many centuries, all of them lived their own lives, which is where this film picks up, so to speak. As our main character for the film is a woman named Circe, who has the power to transmute any matter that she touches into anything she wants, pretty much. Like, in her own words, she once turned a stone into water, or water into a rock, or water into wood. Essentially, she can just transform anything into anything else, with the only limitation being that she can't transmute living matter. So, like, she could transform my leather chair here into butterfly, or into, like, rose petals, but she couldn't do that to me if she wanted. So, yeah, there are limits to her powers. And in the present day, she's a teacher. She teaches like I forget what she taught. Maybe it was archaeology, maybe it was ecosystems, I don't know. But in the present day, she's dating a man named Dane Whitmore, and they're pretty much happy. They're pretty much happy. Even in the beginning of the movie, they're celebrating his birthday. She gives him a present, which is like a ring, which has his family crest on it. It's just, but at the same time, he doesn't know about her being an Eternal, so it's just kind of blind ignorance. And On top of that, Cersei's actually living with another one of the Eternals, I want to say child Eternal named Sprite. I say a child because physically she looks like a kid, but mentally she's just as advanced as the rest of them. She's lived forever, saw many sights, and for many centuries she's stuck looking like a redheaded child. So she doesn't exactly have a lot in the way of the romance department, especially since in the first scene we see of her. Well, okay, we saw her in the beginning of the movie, but the first scene we see of her in the present day, I mean, she's trying to hit on a guy using one of her illusions, because that's her power, she can create illusions, and unfortunately the guy tries to get intimate, and unfortunately, because she's physically a child, that's not going to happen, so she has to just kind of abandon that. But while they're both pretty much doing the best to live their best lives in the present day, that's when things seem to go haywire one day, as during one of Cersei's classes, a massive earthquake hits that shakes the whole building. Cersei does her best to keep her students safe, but as we learn later, the earthquake was a global one. It wasn't just one place on Earth that felt its effects. Everywhere on Earth felt it. Everyone on Earth was shaken. So there's clearly something weird going on. And to make matters worse, while Cersei, Sprite, and Dane are out after Dane's birthday party, they're attacked by another deviant, which is surprising for Cersei and Sprite because they thought that they killed all the deviants. Which also, funny thing, apparently Sprite told Dane a lot about their stuff as the of the Eternals. It's just that she never said, "Oh yeah, that we're Eternals." So when he realizes when he mentions that, I thought you killed them all. Cersei's like, "Wait, you told them that?" Because Dane mentioned that Sprite told him all this stuff. Okay, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. It's dumb. Whatever. But bottom line, the deviant attacks, but this one's a little different than other deviants. It looks bigger, more masculine, has a slight humanoid face, and it seems to only be targeting Cersei and Sprite, to the point where it actually ignores Dane because it's supposed to be killing it's going after life, and just seems to be focusing on them. While Cersei and Sprite do their best to defend themselves against it or get away, eventually it zeroes in on them before it can go in for the kill. They get another unexpected visitor, another member of the Eternals named Icarus, who is essentially their Superman. Even the film acknowledges it. He's got super strength, great invulnerability, he can fly, he's got laser vision. He may not have all of Superman's powers, but essentially he's the team Superman. And he comes in to fight the deviant. He manages to knock it aside a bit and manages to hurt it, even wounding its arms a bit. But after it gets away from after it gets knocked aside enough, it actually begins healing itself. Like, it waves its hand over, its hand starts glowing, and all the wounds that Icarus inflicted begin patching up. And just before it leaves, it seems to try and form words. It's nothing audible yet, but it's clear that it felt like it was trying to say something before it eventually made a retreat. As such, Cersei explains everything to Dane about who they are, why she couldn't do anything, about why she had to keep this a secret, etc., etc., and she tells Dane that he should probably go home. In the meantime, though, Cersei, Sprite, and Icarus go back to Cersei and Sprite's apartment, and Icarus mentions how he came to see them after the earthquake, but the whole deviant thing, that's new to him, and he's worried about what's going to happen. As such, everyone realizing that there might be a connection between a deviant popping up and the entire Earth getting shaken by an earthquake, the three decide that they need to find the rest of the Eternals and essentially get the gang back together. And the first stop is, of course, Ajax, as it turns out that she settled on her own little patch of countryside with a nice little house, a little barn, essentially just living a quiet and peaceful life. Unfortunately, though, when they go to her house, they can't find her in the building, and when they go out and back, they find her dead. Her skin just gray, with some signs of battle outside. And the group ultimately realizes that the deviant probably killed her, and somehow, in some way, managed to absorb her power, since, like I said, it managed to heal itself during the battle, which is, of course, Ajax's power. So they begin realizing that something is clearly wrong, and of course, of course, Cersei and Sprite begin mourning, though Icarus is a little more astute, saying that the Deviants did this, and it looks like he's trying to put on a brave face for everybody. But as Cersei is mourning over Ajax's body, something comes out of it. You see, at the beginning of the movie, we saw this weird golden, because we saw in the beginning of the movie, we saw the Eternals on their ship and they were sleeping, and before they woke up, this weird golden orb came out from their ship and went into Ajax's neck. And as we see during one of the flashback segments, because this film does have some actually has some in media res things where certain story elements happen out of order, specifically flashbacks. And in one of the flashbacks, we saw Ajax talking with Ereshkigal, who's their creator, and we do see him. He's a very, very giant red man with like 6 eyes, and as we see later, whose size dwarfs the planet. Like, to him, it's a bouncy ball. And pretty much as in the present day, as Cersei is looking over Ajax's body, that orb comes out of Ajax. Oh, Cersei over Ajax's body. That orb comes out of Ajax's body and goes into Cersei's neck. And for a brief second, she begins speaking with Ereshkigal before she gets pulled back. The group is a little shocked by this, since the fact that the orb went to Cersei means that not only can she now contact Ereshkigal, but that also means that Ajax chose her to be the next leader of the Eternals, which they're a little surprised by. And even Icarus thinks that maybe this is a mistake, that maybe she didn't actually speak with Ereshkigal, and that maybe she could be going crazy through something called the Mad Weary, I think. They say it in here, I wrote it down. Yeah, the Mad Weary, which is apparently a mental disease that an Eternals can get, which I'll talk about later, because it does pop up in one of the characters, but essentially, no matter what they say, this is the case. Cersei is now the leader of the Eternals, and they still need to find the remainder of them, since, well, they know the Deviants are back, there's something going on, and if it's big enough so that their leader was killed, they kind of need to get everyone back together ASAP. So the next stop is to Mumbai, specifically so they can get their next Eternal, named Kingo, played by Camille Nanjiani. I'm going to say this right now, he's the most annoying member of the group, which I hate saying because Camille Nanjiani is great. He's hilarious, a fun actor. I've seen him in The Big Sick. He did a great job with the comedy and the drama, and he's one of my favorite comedians. He did awesome on SNL, but for some reason, he doesn't bring a lot of his funny to this movie. He does still have some funny. There are still some scenes in it with him that I think are hilarious, but he's my least favorite member of the group. Don't hate him. Do not hate him. He has a lot of things about him that I like, which I'll point out later, and Camille Nanjiani does the best job he can playing the role, so I'm not putting any of the blame on him. Still a great actor, still a great comedian. Check out his work, it's awesome. I just think Kingo's my least favorite member of the group. And it's mostly because he's kind of a glory hog. Apparently, after he broke off from the Eternals, he went off to essentially become a Bollywood movie star, popping up in movies over the years under the cover of every new role was just a different member of his family. Like, some of his early stuff was his great-great-great-grandfather, after that great-great-grandfather, then great-grandfather and grandfather, etc., etc. Essentially, he's every time he pops back in the movies, he apparently just has a new persona, that he's just a member of the same family going through a dynasty of films, etc. That pretty much and so nobody ever suspects him. He even has his own little agent. He even has his own valet/agent who is fully aware of his status as an Eternal. And funny thing, apparently when they first met, his valet tried to kill him because he thought he was a vampire. But on top of that, he and Sprite kind of have some bad blood. Apparently, they traveled together for a while, but Kingo was tired of having to move every 5 years because people noticed that Sprite didn't age, so eventually he just kind of abandoned her, which is a sour spot, but it does kind of get glossed over. Whatever. Pretty much Icarus, Sprite, and Cersei go to meet with Kingo, and what I love is that the common cover story that the Eternals use whenever they meet back up is that they're friends from college. But they pretty much tell Kingo what happened to Ajax, that the Deviants are back, and that something's up. And so Kingo reluctantly does go with them because he's in the middle of a movie, but everyone understands bigger priorities going on. So of course. They let it. So of course they are under understanding. His valet even comes with him to document everything because now they're getting back together, Kingo wants to document everything they're doing to make a movie because this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe and superheroes are a very big deal. As such, they take one of his private jets to another location, which I forgot. Could be Africa. I think it's Africa. I don't remember. I was writing things down when they went. And on the jet, we get some good character stuff between each of the Eternals. Kingo with Sprite, Icarus with Cersei, because Icarus and Cersei were a thing. I'll get to that later. But essentially, they go to Africa to meet with the next two catches. In this case, one member named Gilgamesh and another member named Thena. Gilgamesh is I don't want to say an inventor, but he is essentially the brick house of the group, with his main power being his super strength, and he has the power, and through his celestial/eternal powers, he can create like these energy braces on his arms, so you can use not only enhance his attacks but act as defenses. And of course, then you have Thena, who is of course the basis for Athena, the Greek goddess of war, or not the Greek goddess of war, but you know what I mean. And she has the power to essentially create energy weapons, shields, spears, swords, tridents, etc. And the thing is, she's kind of nuts. Yeah, remember when I mentioned the Mad Weary? Yeah, the Mad Weary is a disease that can affect Eternals. That if they live for too long, the memories of everything they've done begin to kind of collapse in on them, and it starts having an effect on them in the present, just causing them to go in and out, to get violent, attack people, etc. And unfortunately, there's no real cure for the Mad Weary. Once it sets in, the only way to make it stop is to erase an Eternal's memory. Pretty much everything that they've ever seen and experienced just goes poof. And unfortunately, that seemed to be the only option for Thena. She didn't go through with it because everyone thought that would be a bad idea, because they thought if she loses everything, then she'll pretty much not be Thena anymore, since memories are kind of part of the basis for who we are. And as a result, Gilgamesh pretty much said, "I'll take care of her. I can keep her in check. My powers will keep me safe." And and even Ajax warned him, "One day you may have to kill her," but he said, "I understand that." So for centuries, he's been keeping her safe, but of course she can be triggered she can be easily triggered with the right push. And apparently one of those things occurred because when the group goes to their place of residence, they find the bodies of dead Deviants, with Gilgamesh there in an apron making a pie. So as such, they explain everything to Gilgamesh, and they go and find Thena, who's standing at the base of a tree, she's still coming down from one of her freakouts, so she's still a lot more volatile, but Gilgamesh is able to calm her down and kind of bring her back to the present day, make her lucid again. So as such, the group kind of just starts catching up, because they realize that something big is happening, and they need to figure out and somehow is involving the Deviants. It's clearly big enough so the Deviants are trying, because again, like the Deviants killed Ajax, so they don't know what to do. So they're trying to figure out what to do next. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I'll go. So yeah, they're pretty much just trying to figure out what to do next, but Cersei is still kind of lost in thought, because again, like I said, the orb marked her as the leader, but she can't figure out how to contact Arishem. On top of that, the recent earthquakes are still getting to her, especially since, as Thena, in her raving madness, mentioned a planet called Centauri 6, and how everyone was dying, and she was there with them. That the planet was destroyed by massive earthquakes, and even Cersei's like, that's kind of what's happening right now. I need answers, and so she wants to and she thinks Arishem can provide them. As such, Gilgamesh tells her maybe she should just instead of trying to speak to him, just try listening, and so she tries taking his advice and concentrating, and sure enough, that allows her to contact and connect with Arishem to figure out what the hell is going on. And it soon turns out that the Deviants are very much the least of their problems right now. And it's here where we get a major bombshell. Well, actually a few of them. As once Cersei contacts Arishem and explains that the Deviants are back and that the planet is being rocked by massive earthquakes, Arishem responds that it's almost time, and that and when Cersei asks for clarification, Arishem reveals the true nature of the Eternals and their mission. So I'm gonna go over this in like as best as I can, so bear with me. It turns out that the Deviants, they are actually also creations of Arishem. Their original intent was to be sent to planets who were developing life and pretty much act as predators to the predators. Because essentially, if they wanted intelligent life to develop on planets, they needed to get rid of the species that want to take them out. And so he created the Deviants to go there, take care of the predators so that intelligent life could blossom. The problem, however, was that the Deviants also evolved and became predators in themselves, targeting intelligent life, killing people, and as a result, Arishem realized, okay, I gotta find a way to fix this because we need intelligent life to blossom, which would lead to his creation of the Eternals, as they are conscious, they can think, and because they're eternal, just stuck in a state, they never change, they never evolve, they can never grow. And so, and as such, wherever there were deviants in the universe, he sent the Eternals to take them out. And not because he wanted to preserve the life, but because he needed the life or something. You see, so remember how I said how Celestials are essentially what have all this cosmic power that they use to create suns and so forth? Well, in Arishem's own words, the universe is essentially a giant mess of give and take. In order for something to be created, something needs to be destroyed. And the thing is, in order for a Celestial to be born, Arishem sends the seed of a Celestial, essentially an egg and so forth, into what he calls a host planet. A planet that he believes has the potential to create life. And the thing is, in order for a Celestial to be born, it has to be imbued in a planet that's teeming with life. And since the Deviants kill life, that's where the Eternals come in. Essentially, whenever he sends them to planets that he sends the Eternals to a planet that houses a Celestial seed, and their whole idea is to keep the civilization on track, keep it going, make sure it evolves and keeps growing and as a result, and as such, when the civilization finally reaches its zenith, when the world is teeming with enough life, the Celestial can essentially feed on that life and emerge from its egg. Unfortunately, though, such power destroys the host planet and kills everyone on it. And that's what's happening now. The earthquakes that the group has been feeling are the first signs of the emergence. And the celestial that Arishem put into the center of Earth, a celestial called Tiamat, is going to be emerging in a few days. And Arishem pretty much tells Cersei, I don't want you to fail me. The Earth is going to be destroyed, and Tiamat is going to be born. Don't fail, so don't F this up, pretty much. Needless to say, once the conversation is over and Cersei comes back to the present day, she's shaken. Like a lot. And she tells this to the rest of the Eternals, and they take it, I don't want to say they take it well. They each are varied on how well they take it. Kingo thinks that maybe they can that this is Arishem's will, maybe they should follow it. Icarus kind of has similar thoughts. And whereas the rest of them are like, no, we can't just let a planet of innocent people die just so that this one thing can come to life. So, yeah, the team's a little divided on this. They don't know what exactly to do, because on the one hand, they don't want this entire planet to die, but at the same time, Celestials create suns which create even more life. They are going to sacrifice millions for billions. So, essentially, they're essentially thinking, who are we to doubt the will of Arishem? To which some people respond, well, these people don't have a choice. Should we just let innocents die? It's essentially a very big moral conundrum, and since Cersei is the leader, though some people don't accept it, they all look to her, and she proposes maybe they shouldn't kill Tiamat. Maybe they can find a way to delay the emergence. Not stop it, but at least delay it. Keep Tiamat asleep until they can find a way to make it so that to pretty much make everyone happy. Like maybe put Tiamat to sleep and then they'll go out into space and they'll find a way to get the humans off planet. Find another place they can call home. But while they do still they scoff, they do kind of think this is a little dumb, especially since how would Earth have the resources for that? But especially because how are they going to put a god to sleep? Which makes them think maybe we should get Druid's help. Which brings us to the next Eternal, because while a few of them are a little still doubtful of this mission, they're still trying to get their team together, and the next one on the list is the aforementioned Druid, who has the power to control people's minds. And put simply, when he left the Eternals, it wasn't on good terms. He essentially left the Eternals when, I want to say Babylon, I think. I don't know, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I forgot what it was. Again, I wasn't looking. But essentially, there was this, when the Eternals were taking out the last of the Deviants, it was in the middle of a great war and battle, and that finally just made Druid say, no, I'm done. I'm not just going to sit back and do nothing. And so he used his power to pretty much take control of all the armies, all the citizens of the city, and pretty much take them away to his own little private community, where for years he's protected them and their descendants, and just acted as their little protector of his own little community. As such, the Eternals go to his community and they pretty much explain everything to him as well, and he's just kind of taking it all smugly in stride, because this is pretty much like his way of saying, oh, look at that, turns out we're all being used, maybe I was right, Ajax was full of it, and so forth, etc. And of course, there is tension in the air, but of course, they still need his help to try and see if they can figure out a way to put Tiamat to sleep, because, again, big picture and all that. Of course, but because of the aforementioned tension, they don't exactly come to an agreement, so the group just kind of splits out and goes across the village doing their own thing. We've got some character stuff between Cersei and Icarus, between Kingo and Sprite, between Thena and Gilgamesh, with Gilgamesh saying that he would fight to protect her no matter what to his last breath, etc. It's just all some nice, sweet character stuff that helps further go into them as people and what they're doing, what they believe in, etc. But all the sweetness kind of gets grinded to a halt when the Deviants attack the village. The Eternals do their best to fend them off and get the people to safety, but in the midst of the battle, the lead Deviant arrives, the one that killed Ajax and absorbed her powers, and specifically during the battle, he begins targeting Thena. Now, while the rest of the Eternals are able to take out the rest of the Deviants one by one, this last one is still in effect, and unfortunately all this violence triggers Thena and causes her to go into a rampage and attack her teammates. They manage to calm her down, but she's still in kind of a hyper state and could very easily she could very easily go back into her mad weary state. And as a result, the lead Deviant tries to take advantage of this and attack her, only for Gilgamesh to come in and intercept the attack, resulting in the Deviant killing him and absorbing his powers. As a result of this, the Deviant actually begins mutating. As before, it did kind of have a somewhat humanoid form, but then after it absorbs Gilgamesh's powers and the life force, it begins shifting again. Its claws turn to fingers. It stops walking on all fours and stands upright and begins taking on a humanoid shape, even getting a humanoid face. And it's now voiced by Bill Skarsgard, which I like. Bill Skarsgard's creepy, and this monster does have a couple of creepy scenes after this. And straight to the point, the lead deviant now with consciousness and clarity now realizes we were all built to die. We were created and used up by unjust gods, and every time an emergence occurred, more of my people died, and you Eternals just kept taking us out. Put simply, he wants revenge. He wants revenge on the Celestials, he wants revenge on the Eternals, and he makes it clear that under no circumstances he will not rest until they're all dead. They managed to fend him off too, but like I said, Gilgamesh dies and everyone mourns, especially Thena, since of course they were close because he kept watch over her. In the meantime, though, seeing all this, Druid does finally decide to join with the group, but the thing is, though, his powers are not strong enough to put a celestial to sleep. They're pretty much literal gods. That his can only go so far. So if they want to boost it, they need an extra hand. Which brings us to the next recruit, Fastos, who's essentially their technician, so to speak. He is essentially a technopath, I think. He's super intelligent, can create and design any technology he wants, and seems to have a mental connection with anything he creates, any form of technology that he uses, because he can disassemble it and reassemble it with just a few hand waves. And so yeah, he's pretty much the technician of the Eternals. And for years he's been kind of away from human affairs because, well, in a word, Hiroshima. He helped get humans to the point where Hiroshima became a thing, which is kind of dumb, but whatever. But pretty much the shock of it pretty much made him decide, these people aren't worth saving. I don't want anything to do with them. He was however, he's not in that mindset now. As apparently one day he met a guy whose name I legitimately do not remember because he only appeared in like 2 scenes, and essentially he fell in love and they started a family, even having a kid. And so for years he just kind of led a quiet life, being a father for his kid, a husband to his husband. Pretty much just he has a quiet life and he's doing fine. And so when the group goes to see him, specifically Circe and Icarus, he says he doesn't want to get involved in anything, even when he gets told the truth, that he just wants to live a quiet life with his family. Though Icarus does rightfully point out that he's still using his powers, as he reinforced their entire house against attacks, even though it all looks normal. Even then, he still doesn't want to help, but with urgings from his husband, he's told, the world's coming to an end, at least do this so we can see our son grow up. And so, with encouraging like that, Fastos does join the group, and so the group goes to Cairo, I wrote it down too, where is it? Iraq, where there's to an archaeological dig, and Drew uses powers to send off all the excavators and so forth. And so and it turns out that in the middle of the excavation site is their ship. And when they go on it, they run into the final recruit for their mission, Makari, who is essentially a speedster. That's her power. She can move super fast, and she's deaf. She's deaf, but because of her superpowers, she can sense vibrations in people. Can tell what you're saying just by hearing the vibrations of your voice. So she communicates through sign language, and of course because she's deaf, she doesn't really speak a lot because, well, she can hear her own voice. And she's also my favorite member of the group. She's awesome. She's snarky, fun, nice to be around, and her powers kick all kinds of ass. I'm not even kidding. She's probably my favorite member of the group, and if you doubt me, I will find you, and I will have a heartfelt conversation with you about why your opinions differ from mine. Put simply, what she's been doing for the last few centuries is just bumming it out on the ship, just taking whatever she wanted, just reading, gathering any treasures she thought were of value, and just waiting for the order to be able to leave the Earth, because that's the whole reason the Eternals haven't left. And so when the rest of the Eternals come on, she, of course, thinks, oh, are we finally leaving? And they, of course, get her up to speed, no pun intended, on what's going on. That the emergence is coming, that they're pretty much just puppets for Ereshkigal, and that sooner or later the planet is going to die, and they want to find a way to stop that without stopping the emergence. So the group just kind of has more moments on the ship, and we see that Thena is now a little bit more bloodthirsty because she wants to kill that lead deviant for killing Gilgamesh, and Fastos ultimately does think he has a way of stopping Tiamat. Essentially, what he wants to do is that he wants to create these bracelets that can funnel their celestial power into themselves, boosting their power greatly, and through the bracelets they can all unite their powers into what they call a unimind, and with the unimind they can all fuel their celestial energy into one Eternal, which can boost his powers immensely, and they think that if they can do all that and funnel all their celestial energy into Druid, he can communicate with Tiamat and order him to go to sleep. So unfortunately, though, there's still some schematic problems, like how can they build a connection through the bracelets, how they can do that, how can they get it all settled down, etc. But in the middle of everything, the Eternals are still, well, arguing, because they are fully aware that if this plan doesn't work, they've got to find another option, and the only other option that they can think of is to take Tiamat out. Because, like I said, Celestials are massive. Like I said, Earth, bouncy ball, or more appropriate, a basketball. Basketball. This guy emerges, everyone dies, it's either Earth or Tiamat, and of course, this is still a big thing, and many of them, and quite a few of them are like, I don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. I don't want to kill this thing and stop like billions of other worlds from being created and so forth. And of course, there's still the skepticism of Cersei being the new leader, so people are judging her. And in the midst of everything, Icarus just kind of walks away and heads outside. Though Kingo tries to stop him and say, "Look, boss, I'm with you to the end. I'm with you to the end here." And I wrote this line down because it's a good one, especially. Kingo tells Icarus, I'll follow you to the end, as I always have." And when Icarus hears that, he just tells him, "You don't know me. You don't know me as well as you think you do." And when he steps outside, he begins reminiscing, and it's here we get another bombshell. It turns out that Icarus already knew about the emergence. According to him, Ajax told him about Icarus after they left Babylon, because they were defending Babylon from the Deviants. And for centuries, he knew about this. He's tried his best to keep it away from the group, especially Cersei, because, well, like I said, they were an item, they cared about each other, and they at one point even got married, but eventually he wound up leaving her because the guilt was eating away at him, and he knew one day that if he would tell her, and he didn't know she'd take it, so he just ran away. As such, he did meet up with Ajax, and she told him that the emergence would be happening within a week, and he thought, okay, good, then we can finally get this over with. But it turns out Ajax had a change of heart. It turns out that over the centuries, she grew attached to Earth, realized that she cared about its people and everything on it, and she doesn't want Earth to be sacrificed for the sake of Tiamat, and that she thinks they need to be stopped, especially since Thanos wiped out half of the universe, and yet the heroes of this world banded together and brought everyone back within 5 years with just a snap of the finger. So how can you not admire that? There's more to these people than just cannon fodder. So she thinks they're worth defending, and Icarus initially told her exactly what Kingo said to him, that I'll follow you to the end as I always have, and with that in mind, he tells her, there's something I actually want to show you. And it turns out, it's the Deviants. It turns out that these Deviants it turns out that when the Eternals are going after Deviants, they missed a handful. Essentially, these ones are frozen in the ice, and essentially with Tiamat coming out, some of the glaciers melted and freed these Deviants. And it turns out Icarus is planning to throw Ajax to them. And it's clear it's not something he wants to do because, well, he cares about Ajax, and he cares about the rest of his team, but his loyalty goes to I kept saying his name too. Well, Arishem. To Arishem first, and even Ajax like, I'm sorry, I led you down the wrong path. And Ajax says, it's the only path. And pretty much, he pretty much pushes Ajax to the Deviants, and while she does her best to fend him off, the lead Deviant ultimately managed to get her and, well, absorbed her life force and her powers, which caused it to mutate into the first form we saw it in. And it shared that power with the other Deviants, mutating them into these other monstrous forms based off of monsters from mythology. At which point they all went and sought out the Eternals so that they could feast on their life forces too. In the meantime, Icarus brought Ajax's body back to her farm, and in a fit of mourning and rage, he used his laser vision to destroy some of her yard to make it look like there was a battle. And put simply, what he wanted to do was that he wanted to make the group think the Deviants were the bigger problem, and he thought that would keep them busy until the emergence would happen, and they'd be so preoccupied with the Deviants that they wouldn't have any time to do anything about it. And like I said, he knew this the whole time. And while Cersei does go out to see Icarus, and they share a moment with each other, and they just about how much they care about each other, etc., unfortunately, as they're talking, and go back into the ship, Cersei almost collapses because she can feel the emergence about to happen. As such, they send Mikari out to try and find the point of emergence, like where it's all happening. But it's at this point that Icarus finally lays his cards on the table, as he uses laser vision to destroy Fastos' blueprints for the bracelets. And when Mikari comes back, he tries to hit her with her laser vision because she found where the point of emergence was, which is essentially a volcano. Pretty much, he makes it clear his loyalty is to... I forgot his name. I keep forgetting his name. Arishem. I'm sorry, I don't know why. I remembered his name for a little while there. Now I'm forgetting it. Why? And he makes it clear that his loyalty is to Arishem and that this isn't their right. That they were all created for Arishem and that that it's their job to ensure that Tiamat is born and that Earth gets destroyed. Of course, the rest of them are like, no, you're not going to do this. We're not going to let you. We can't just let these people die. But of course, he makes it clear that under no uncertain terms, he will do everything he can to stop Tiamat. And he said, I did my best to keep this a secret. I did this all to protect you. They're like, well, then what? Then why didn't Ajax label you as the leader? And they're able to put two and two together and realize you killed her, didn't you? As such, he pretty much tells the group, don't challenge me or I will kill all of you. And just before he leaves, Sprite says she wants to go with him because apparently they loved each other. Or she loved him, actually. It's weird. I'll get to that. I'll get to that later when I talk about the characters. But put simply, Sprite manages to give them cover and they fly away. And the group realizes they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Especially when, after they leave, Kingo says that he wants to leave as well. Put simply, while he does care about the Earth and its people, he's actually on Icarus' side when it comes to beliefs. He believes that Arishem's will is law. He believes in him, thinks that at the end of the day, no matter how many people are sacrificed, this is all for the best. But at the same time, like I said, he cares about Earth, and the Eternals are his family, and he doesn't want to fight them over this. So he's not gonna try and stop them. As such, he just walks out and says, I'll hope to see you all again on the next planet. As such, the group is just kind of stuck. They don't know what to do now, and they know that if they try and go up against Icarus, odds are it's going to be a losing battle. They don't really know what they're going to do next. Even Cersei begins having second thoughts about her being the leader of the group, but Athena manages to help get her spirits back up by telling her, Ajax chose you for a reason. You loved this planet the instant you saw it, and when we love something, we do everything in our power to protect it. And that manages to get Cersei's spirits up enough so that in time for Fastos to come in and say that he knows how they can make the bracelets work. Like I said, the orb because the orb that Cersei has connects her to Arishem, and he thinks that if he can repurpose that orb and its connection to Arishem, he can turn that into a connection that they all share, which they can use to create the Unimind and funnel all their power into Druid so he can put Tiamat to sleep. As such, she hands over the orb, and he does end up creating the bracelets, and so the group suits up, sends their ship up to the emergence point, and from there, a battle ensues, pretty much. Icarus is there to try and fight off to stop their ship, but at best he ends up only finding Athena on board with Druid, Cersei, and I want to say Fastos, or is it Mikari? Yeah, it's Mikari on the ground at the emergence point. So he ends up fighting Athena while the rest of the group does their best to get the emergence all started up, start up the Unimind. So they all fuse their powers into Druid, and at first he's able to use his abilities to seemingly put Tiamat to sleep, but unfortunately Icarus breaks out of the ship and essentially punches Druid into a mountain, or is it a rock wall? Bottom line, he's out of commission, so their whole put Tiamat to sleep using Druid's mind control powers is kind of down the crapper for a moment, especially as Icarus is pretty much out for blood and begins starting to tear the group apart. Mikari manages to come in and uses her power and shows why she's the MVP, as she managed to use her powers to pretty much just keep Icarus off balance, throwing him into walls, and despite his superior strength, you can't really hit someone that can move at light speed, as she keeps running around, punching him, smacking to him, using her momentum to throw him into cavern walls. And of course, at this point, Fastos shows up, and we see that he's used these technopathic powers to create mecha gauntlets, which he can use to shoot discs and knock around, even latching Icarus down. It's just really damn awesome, and an awesome fight scene showing off the team's range of powers and abilities. But then, of course, that's when the lead Deviant arrives and ends up trying to fight Icarus, which the group realized they had to fight him off too, because if he absorbs Icarus's powers, he's going to be an even bigger problem too. So Athena goes to fight him, and long story short, she manages to slice him into pieces, and he almost briefly tries absorbing her powers, which might have cured the Mad Weary. Don't quote me on that, but essentially, yeah, the Deviant's taken care of. But in the meantime, Fastos and Mikari manage to hold Icarus down, and so they tell Cersei to go to the emergence point and deal with Tiamat, because, well, the thing is, that's where their backup plan came in. You see, something I neglected to mention is that back in the village, when Druid's village was being attacked by the Deviants, Cersei wound up fighting one of them, and during her fight, she managed to turn the Deviant into a tree. Like I said, her powers should not be working on people, on thinking beings, and while the Deviants may be predatory species, they still constitute enough of a presence to be considered alive, so that shouldn't work. And so the group thought that popcorn trying to come up. Regardless, the group thinks that if she can now affect living beings, then maybe she could use her powers to transmute Tiamat into something that'll stop him, which unfortunately will kill him. But at this point, again, it's either Tiamat or the Earth. As such, with that in mind, Cersei goes to the emergence point, and she runs into Sprite, who at first uses her powers to create an illusion of Ajax to try and keep her distracted. And while she's looking at the illusion over here, Sprite comes up behind her, invisible, and stabs her in the gut. And Sprite makes it clear under no uncertain terms, she hates it here. She hates it here because again, she's stuck looking like a child, and she sees everything that the rest of the Eternals have, plus all the human stuff that she can't have, and she's just sick of it. And so she just wants Earth gone so she can start somewhere new. As such, she tries using her illusionary powers to create hundreds of illusions of the volcano to throw her off, but Druid manages to come in and knock her out with a rock. Unfortunately, and Cersei's able to get back up and use her powers to turn the blade she was stabbed with into water, but unfortunately, Tiamat is starting to wake up, and and the emergence has begun as he begins growing from the Earth's surface. And just to give us an example of the scale of this guy, his fingers look like mountains. That again, those are just his fingers. And so the group realizes it's now or never. As such, when some of Tiamat's hand sprouts up from the ground, Cersei starts using her powers to start transmuting him into stone, but unfortunately Icarus sees all this, realizes what Cersei's doing, and he manages to break free from Fastos' trap and flies to try and go kill her. But when he arrives and he sees her there, even though he tries to use his laser vision, he can't do it. He remembers all the sweet and nice times they had, and he can't do it. And so he just kind of collapses. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Once again, dog. Plus, I needed a drink. It's hot here, and I was thirsty. Anyway, so yeah, Icarus just kind of stands down, and Cersei gets ready to do her trick again, only just before she does, the group engages in another Unimind. Only this time it's not assisted by the bracelets, because everyone gets pulled into this, including Icarus and Sprite, who, like I said, who left before they could get bracelets. And through the Unimind, Cersei's powers get augmented to great effect, and she manages to do one last burst of energy, which spreads out over Tiamat and, well, turns him into stone before he can fully emerge. And the end result, the Earth is saved, and Tiamat is dead. The group is, of course, happy about this, but Icarus is just in tears because he regrets his actions, and he regrets attacking Circe at all. He begs for forgiveness. She kind of does forgive him, but he essentially leaves Earth in shame, flying off the planet and going straight for the sun. As such, the rest of the group, including Sprite, do meet up back on the beach, and put simply, they realize that why they were able to do all that was because Tiamat. Essentially, whenever a celestial emerged, it would link with all whatever Eternals were on the planet, and a side effect of this is that their abilities would be boosted, which is why Circe could now transmute organic matter as well, so once Tiamat began emerging, he linked with all the other Eternals, which because of Circe, they were able to funnel all their powers into her, and all because of Tiamat, which makes you wonder if Tiamat even knew what they were doing. He might have, I don't know, but bottom line, because of that, Circe has gotten a temporary power boost, and as a result, she uses the last of her powers to turn Sprite human so that she can experience all those things that she couldn't before, so she can get older, have a life, etc. Don't really know if she deserves a happy ending, considering that she was going to let the planet die, but whatever. I didn't write this. But as a result, Circe used the last of her augmented powers. She's back to her regular powers afterwards, and the film then cuts to 2 weeks later as the Eternals are still kind of reeling from everything, and the world's reacting to giant Tiamat head in the middle of the ocean. But put simply, the group realizes that there are things they still want to do. As a result, they once more split up, though they still remain relatively close together. Athena, Druid, and Makari end up taking the ship, and their plan is to go out into space and find the other Eternals and awaken them to the truth that they are pretty much just servants of Arishem, and that their planets are most likely hosts to other celestial eggs, and whether they want to keep fighting to defend it or not. And meanwhile, on Earth, Circe, Kingo, and Fastos are just going to stick around. Kingo is once more going to be taking care of Sprite because she's now human, and thus he thinks that she needs to go to school, even though her mind is probably vastly probably has a lot more vast knowledge than any other child. And Fastos is going back to his family, and Circe goes back to meet with Dane, and they pretty much just have like a nice cutesy little moment as Circe realizes that she wants to live among its people, but she can't keep doing what she was doing before, and so she and Dane have a nice little moment. They reconcile. It's all nice and sweet. But as they're talking, Dane says, and you remember how we said we don't want to keep any more secrets? Well, the thing is, I kind of looked more on my family's history, but before he can say what he found, the sky goes black, and Circe seems to freeze up and look to the sky. And so we suddenly hear there's flashes of lightning, and the clouds part, and there's Arishem looking over the earth. And suddenly, Circe gets surrounded by these golden rings, and she's pulled up into space, alongside Kingo and Fastos. And Arishem tells them, you killed a Celestial, and you've killed a Celestial. Because you've chosen to spare this world, I will spare it as well, but I'm going to take you back with me so that I can study your memories, and through them I'm going to see if these people were worth saving. And after I do all that, I'm going to come back to this planet and judge it to see if it's worthy. At which point, he disappears, taking the last 3 remaining Earthbound Eternals with him, and the rest of the world is just left there to gawk. And Dane is just standing there in a park, just kind of realizing, oh crap, what do I do now? And that's where the movie ends. Well, sort of. Of course, since it's a Marvel movie, we got after credit scenes, and both of them are actually important, as the first scene focuses on Athena, Druid, and Makari as they realize that they've lost communication with Earth, and they realize that it's a result of Arishem, and that they're wondering what can they do now. But as they're pondering this, they realize that someone's coming. As such, everyone gets into battle stance, ready to fight. When out from a strange light of teleportation comes a troll named Pip, who is drunk. And while the group are wondering, who the hell are you? He says, hold on a sec. He then clears his throat and gives a dramatic introduction to the real star of the party, the supposed brother of Thanos and Prince of Titan, the killer of Black Roger, a man named Star Fox, aka Eros, who claims he is also an Eternal. And he tells the group, their friends are in trouble, but he knows where he can find them. And so that's where that scene ends. And as for the other after credit scene, we cut back with Dane as he's in an office, because he's a teacher too, and so he obviously has a university office. And as we see in the office, we see a box in his office with his family crest on it. He's contemplating opening it and having second thoughts, but ultimately he realizes he wants to do something because he obviously wants to save Cersei, and so he opens the box, and inside is a sword wrapped in gauze. Its surface is black, almost inky black, and the instant he opens it, there's strange ethereal voices coming from the blade. And written on the interior of the lid of the blade is a phrase in another language, which he translates as, "Death is your reward." And he realizes he knows what the risks are, but he can't just stand there and do nothing. And he reaches for the blade. The voice is still whispering, but just before he touches it, someone off screen says, "Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitmore?" And it cuts to black. So, yeah, that was Eternals. My thoughts on it? Honestly, I think it's really good. Not great, but for what it is, I genuinely think it's really good. I mean, okay, a little of my original opinion is still in there. I still think there are aspects of the film that could be worked on, but for what it is, I think this film is really strong and actually really entertaining to watch. And I think all of that comes kind of from its main cast. One of the things, let me put it this way. Remember how in the Shang-Chi vlog I mentioned how one of the film's strong suits was that it didn't feel like a superhero movie, that it felt more like a kung fu movie that had slight superhero elements? Honestly, that feels a similar case of the Eternals. There are aspects of it that feel like that can make it a superhero movie, but in reality, it feels more like a character piece. There's a lot there that makes it aside from mention of characters in the Marvel Universe, like the Avengers, or how Captain America and Iron Man are now dead, there's not really a lot that connects or even mentioning the whole thing with Thanos, there's not really a lot that connects this movie to the greater MCU. There's not a lot of, they only have a handful of mentions to other Marvel characters. For the most part, the Eternals are mostly just kind of isolated, and that's obviously by design. The Eternals, like I said, were only supposed to interfere with human affairs if it involved the Deviants. So stuff like wars or everything with Thanos, they had to keep hands off. That wasn't their problem. Mind you, if Eros is Thanos' brother, then wouldn't his invasion probably can be considered a bad thing? I don't know. So I guess that's kind of a plot hole, or maybe it's not, I don't know. But bottom line, just point is, they're essentially, by design, they were not supposed to be involved with anything in the Marvel Universe, and you can kind of see that in this movie. A lot of their affairs have very little to do with the affairs of the greater MCU, which allows for a more character-focused movie, which I think really does work, because one of the aspects of this film that I think really is interesting is the whole placement of the characters as Eternals. like, Arishem said that he created the Eternals to never evolve, to never change, just be constant. That's why they never age. That's why they always stay as they are, no matter, despite, and live for centuries. Because they're not supposed to change, because that's what happened with the Deviants. They evolved and they changed and they became a threat, and they became a threat to the grand design. So they had to be, so he created the Eternals to take them out. But with that being said, that's also, but when you have characters who have eternal life and whose primary directive is to only interfere in some conflicts, there's gonna be some problems. And with the Eternals, we see that strife. And as a result, it creates, honestly, very human characters, for lack of a better term. The Eternals feel like real people, and a lot of the struggles they have with living forever and not being able to age and being told they can never interfere, all of that feels very natural and works to their characters. And it really makes a lot of them feel more than just 2D, or like they're just, oh, this character is the Joker, this guy's the strong guy, or this lady is the speedster, this lady's the leader, this lady's the warrior, etc., etc. They're not just one-note token characters. They all have layers to them, and this is another reason why I don't hate Kingo. He's my least favorite member of the Eternals, but there are layers to him. And like I said, he does have his funny moments. There was one scene where he was fighting one of the Deviants, and like I said, his valet was filming the whole thing for a biopic, and so and at one point he managed to destroy an Eternal because his powers are shooting energy beams out of his fingers, and he managed to charge up a big beam and destroy and kill the Deviant that pounced on him, and it pounced on him. And so when he blew up its head, the blood blew up on him. He fell over and he yelled out, "Did you get that?" It's like, "Of course, I got it, sir." I admit that was kind of an amusing scene, but again, while he is kind of can be annoying, he's not dumb. He's not an idiot. And there are a lot of reasons, and there's a lot to hit more to him than just the glamorous movie star. And I like his stance when it came down to acting as a neutral party, because when he did join back up with the group and they were all heading out to go get Gilgamesh and Thena to try and figure out what was going on with the Deviants and the stuff with the Emergence, he and Sprite, of course, talked. And of course, Sprite is obviously bitter for having been abandoned by Kingo. But the thing is, Kingo never stopped caring about her. While he did want to have his own life, hence why he ran away, which is a dick move all around. Even he's aware of that. At the same time, he sees the Eternals as his family, and he thinks that them splitting up was a very big mistake. That if they had all stayed together, then none of this would be happening. Ajak would still be alive. He cares about the thing, and that's just it. He cares about the Eternals immensely, and when Icarus reveals that he's not going to that he's going to try and stop the group from stopping Tiamat, he does briefly fight Icarus. The only reason he fights him is because Icarus is threatening the rest of the group, and pretty much Kingo tells him, "Back off, you're not going to hurt my family." And so and it ends up working. Icarus leaves, but again, he's the kind of what makes him work is that he's the neutral character. And I think that makes sense. He spent centuries following this mantra, and he cares about the Eternals and the rest of his family, but Arishem is their creator. He's their ruler. He's their literal god. He can't just turn his back on that either. And like he said, who are they to stop something like this? Yes, he cares about the earth, but there are still, who are they to say that millions should live so that billions will never be born? Yeah, it's an ugly process, but essentially, who are they to say that they shouldn't let this great wrong be done so that even greater right can occur? It's a very interesting neutral mindset. He doesn't want to fight the Eternals, and he cares about the planet, but he also can't forget about Arishem. It's actually really, it makes sense. It's tragic, and you can probably mark him as a coward if you wanted, but at the same time, it's a natural mindset to have, and it's clearly bugging him. He wants to help these friends. He wants to protect them, but he doesn't want to go up against their god and especially against another of their kind. So he just says, I'm out. I can't do this. And it's a very natural and very human mindset, despite the fact that, and that's another thing that I think works. Like I said, actually, that's just me repeating a point. Like I said, the Eternals feel very human, which also goes for Icarus and Sprite. While they both turn and join up with Tiamat, their reasons make a lot of sense. Icarus, throughout the film, we've gotten to know Icarus more and more, and for the most part, he seems like a really decent guy, really friendly. He trusts his team, he cares about them, and like I said, his relationship with Cersei, and he and Cersei had a relationship, and that relationship feels real. We don't see a lot of time dedicated to it, but the scenes that they have together are sweet and kind. There's clear attraction, clear intimacy. There's hurt feelings when Cersei and Icarus are talking, and Cersei tries asking him, why did you leave? And when he begins talking about, and when later on we see that the reason he left was because he couldn't stand lying to her, and he knew that if he stayed, he was going to eventually tell her, it clearly hurts him. And throughout the whole film, you can see he's trying to get the team back together. He does care about these people, and it's tearing him apart inside that he has to lie to them. When he kills Ajax and by feeding her to the Deviants, afterwards you can just see the turmoil on his face because he clearly didn't want to do that. This is not something he wanted to do. This was his leader. He trusted her, for God's sake. But if he wanted to make sure that the emergence still occurred, she had to die, and he's not happy with the decision. In fact, throughout the whole film, he's clearly not happy with anything that he's doing. He would love nothing more than for the Eternals to just stop fighting. Just let this happen so that the emergence could occur and they can have their memories wiped and move on. Which, yeah, that's another thing. Apparently, the Eternals, after each emergence, would have their memories wiped, and Arishem would keep them somewhere so he could study them and learn more about the Deviants, and then so the Eternals would be sent off to another planet to do the same thing over and over. So, yeah, that's effed up. But there is clear complexity there. He isn't just evil for evil's sake. The whole reason he's doing this is because he's put so much on the line for this. He cares about he's put so much on the line. Despite everything, despite how he's tried to build a relationship with people, build a family with the Eternals, at the end of the day, he was always told, this is your mission. And he took that to heart, to the point where he has sacrificed those relationships just so they can keep it going. And when one day he's told, your mission was a mistake, we need to fix it, he reacts accordingly. He's like, no, I put so much on the line for this. This is happening one way or another. And when he again, he clearly does not want to do this. It's clear that it's hurting him inside to do it, but how he gets through it is that he tells himself, it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. I have to do this. They may hate me, but this is what has to happen. And it all comes to a head when he finally has a chance to take Cersei out when she's ready to kill Tiamat, and he can't do it. He remembers all the sweet times they had together, and it finally breaks him. He finally says, no, I can't do this. And when she finally does kill Tiamat, he begs for forgiveness, but realizes he's done too much. He's broken. He can't be around them anymore, and since he can't face his own failure, since he can't face them anymore, but he can't face the Celestials, he just flies into the sun and lets himself die. I mean, supposedly, he could still very much be alive. He's still very powerful. But point is, there's more to him than just the token evil teammate. He's not the token evil. There are very human reasons for why he does what he does. And the same goes for Sprite as well. While I still question why she gets a happy ending in the end, considering that she was very much willing to let Earth die, her reasons for why she ultimately supports Icarus make sense. Here's the thing. She's an immortal being trapped in the body of a child. She has wisdom far beyond her years, and yet she can't have a life. The rest of the Eternals can have something akin to a normal life. Cersei has a boyfriend. Druid is the leader of his own village. Fastos has a husband and a son. What does she have? a roommate. That is all she has. She looks at the Earth and she's angry because she sees all the things that she wants but cannot have because of her state as a child. And as a result, when she finally says, I just want to start over. I want to just get rid of this place, go somewhere else where I can start a new life, where I can finally grow up. It makes so much sense. It doesn't make what she's doing okay, but it's so sad, and you sympathize with her to a degree. I mean, not to the point where you think, oh, well, of course, let the Earth die. No, we live here. Why would we want the Earth to go? At the same time, though, it's understandable. And these are things that pop up when you live forever. When you're put in these limitations, your mind will break. And that's another thing that I love. They show the ramifications of that. The Mad Weary with Thena makes so much sense. When you live for that long, at some point, all that augmented lifespan will come crashing down on you, and it will hurt. You've seen so many things, because if you live forever, eventually everything's going to come back. Eventually you'll have seen everything, and there's only one or two things that can happen. You either get bored or you go mad, and that's what the Mad Weary is, sort of. Well, okay, they do explain the Mad Weary is essentially a side effect of the memory wiping, because if something goes wrong with the process, then as a result it can have the memories of your previous lives can leak over, which is why Thena was talking about like Centauri 6 and so forth, because that was one of her previous missions before she had her mind erased. But even without that explanation, it makes so much sense for this to happen. Imagine just living forever, having to deal with seeing so much trauma, so much death, and so much life. Eventually, sooner or later, all of that's going to come crashing down on you, and it will hurt. And as such, seeing Thena turn out this way makes so much sense. She may be a great warrior, but even the greatest of warriors has a breaking point. And so having all of that come catching up to her, especially since the Mad Weary first sets in during a war that the humans are having, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the same goes for other characters too. Well, like I said, Fastos almost gave up on humanity after Hiroshima. The only reason he came back was because he found love and a family. And of course, there's Druid. Druid was the first of the group to become disillusioned with the Eternals' mission, because he just said, why are we just doing all this? Why are we just letting them sit back and kill each other? This is wrong, and I don't care if you think what I'm doing is bad, I'm going to do something. And so he just finally says, screw you guys, takes all the warring humans and takes them away somewhere. And that kind of mindset is also natural. You live forever constantly being told, don't do anything. Don't do anything. You're supposed to just fight the monsters, let them sort this out. And seeing all these conflicts happening over here, you're obviously eventually at some point you're going to think, why shouldn't I help them? Why shouldn't I do something? And even when people keep telling you you're not supposed to, eventually you're going to say, you know what, up yours. And as such, Druid's mindset makes a lot of sense. It makes sense for why he would leave the Eternals and form his own little community. It's so very interesting to watch, and seeing how eternal life has affected each of these characters, how it's affected them positively or negatively, or how they fall in the middle. It's so very interesting and makes for such complex layers to each of the characters, showcasing a lot of who they are, what they want to do, what drives them to reach the goal. And and makes it better, each character is unique and interesting. While I had to take notes for certain characters to remember their names, each one of them is distinct enough so that you can figure out who's who. Who's who? Thena is, of course, the great warrior. Like, you got Icarus, who's meant to be who was essentially the second in command. Cersei, who's kind but a fierce warrior. Sprite, who's kind of the smart aleck child. Mikari, who's the MVP, who has the best powers. She's, like I said, seriously awesome. Seriously, that final battle when she used her super speed on Icarus was just friggin' awesome, and I love her. Fastos with his gauntlets, and seeing him use technology as both a tool and a weapon. It's all just so damn cool and just so fun to watch. And that's another thing I love. The action scenes. Yeah, they're all CGI slugfests, and to many that may seem like boring to watch. Like, oh yeah, more CGI action, all that stuff, but at the same time, it's still fun to watch, and the variety with the team, and having them all have different kinds of superpowers and using them effectively in battle and in coordination with each other, it makes each fight scene so enjoyable and fun to watch, especially seeing how they coordinate with each other and know when to and work off of each other in battle. Like we see if one person is able to hold a creature back, another can swoop in and take it down, or one creature can, or if one person distracts, another person can land a hit. If one group of the Eternals is fighting the monster, the rest are over here getting civilians to safety. It's really damn interesting, and it's really just super fun to watch. And like I said, each of the Eternals' powers are all well, some of them are, of course, stuff you've seen before. How they use them is really unique and interesting, and it all works out perfectly. And I think each of the Eternals is varied in each of the different powers, so that they all are unique. Same, and like I said, their personalities are always nice too. You got some that are snarky, some that are more stoic, some that are more serious, some that are more jokey. It's actually just really nice, and I like seeing them work off each other. All the characters have really good chemistry and know how. And many of them, and you can see how many of these people are friends. As a lot of them have some really nice moments where they clearly care about each other, are there for each other. Any scene between Druid and Makari is nice because it's clear that they care about each other and like each other. Like there's one scene where I think they're in Babylon, where Makari is trying to trade some goods for a tablet, and the guys try to screw her. She knows what they're doing because she can hear because she can feel vibrations of people when they talk. Of course, at that point, Druid sees a group of people fighting, so he uses his powers to stop them. Makari calls him out on it and says, well, okay. It's like, yeah, I know what it was wrong, but it's also wrong to steal. And he pulls out this thing that she took, and so she takes it away, and just the smirk on her face, she says in sign language, I won't tell if you don't tell. It's really cute, and throughout and any other scene with them and later in the movie is just so nice because they clearly, it's puppy love, but it's cute, and I love it. So it makes sense why they would go to space together along with Thena. So I like that interaction. And it's the same with the rest of the group. With Gilgamesh and Thena, because they spent years together, all these years together. And Gilgamesh, of course, took care of Thena, kept her from losing herself, etc. And of course, like we got stuff with Kingo and how he talked to Sprite and how he talks to Sprite, how there's still tension but still clearly caring between them. Like I already mentioned, Icarus and Circe, and of course there's Ajax. While she's not present for the majority of the movie, her presence is clearly felt, and each of the Eternals did still hold her in some regard, even the ones that were disgraced of her. Every one of them has something to say about her. We see her personality. She's caring and kind. She's like the mother of the group, and very early on in their mission, she did begin having second thoughts. It's part of why she broke the Eternals up when strife began building, because she thought these people on this planet are different. They don't deserve to die. And I'm guessing that part of the reason she sent the Eternals off is because she hoped that they could find a place on this world so that they could, actually find something worth fighting and living for. Very thirsty. So that's all, of course, really cool. And I think another major strength of this movie, the cosmic scale. When you learn about the Celestials in Tiamat, things make it feel so much bigger than just a standard Marvel movie. Seeing Arishem in all his glory just feels like this is not a guy you can fight. This is because they say, he's a literal god. His power is probably unmatched. Here's the thing. You get the impression with Arishem that if you tried to fight him in any way, shape, or form, there wouldn't be a fight. You would just be gone. You would be gone. And you get that impression with him. You get the impression of this wise, old being, so immensely big and so immensely great and so immensely powerful that to him, the universe and the people that live in it are just things. He doesn't, and it's not like the point where he just considers them like brush-offs, no. But at the same time, he doesn't care a lot about them either. To him, the universe is just a big giant cosmic scale, a big give and take. He didn't select Earth because, oh, I don't like how that planet looks over there. No, he just selected Earth to house Tiamat because he just needed a planet with life. He just pretty much is unbiased and uncaring. He's unbiased. He's unbiased in terms when it comes to Earth. The only reason he wanted life to continue on is because they needed enough life to create the Celestial. But at the same time, the Celestial will create even more life by creating a star. So it's just, he doesn't care. This is just his job, and ultimately his grand goal and grand scheme is just keep the cosmic scales turning. And as a result, he feels like such a bigger threat than, say, characters like Thanos, or like say Thanos, who ultimately wanted to just kill half the universe. Because while he was a master strategist and planner, odds are that he was nothing compared to this guy. So yeah, this is a guy that you feel like that you cannot fight. And the fact that one of these guys is in the middle of the earth and is going to come out, it makes it feel like such a grand thing. When you learn that this guy coming out will kill everybody, it makes the stakes feel so much higher, so much grander, and it kind of puts a clock on, and it kind of just puts a time clock on it. And again, part of what makes it so interesting is, again, and I go back to this again, the characters. Because honestly, another thing that doesn't make this feel like a superhero movie, these people don't feel like superheroes. And I mean that in the best way possible. They don't feel like people who have power and are using it because they have a grand mission, or because they believe in like great power, great responsibility, or because it's the right thing to do, etc. No, these are people who have power, who were told, go to this planet, fight these monsters, and then come back when I say so. And they followed their orders to the letter, and while many of them do want to protect the Earth because of personal reasons, at the end of the day, a lot of them, they're all varied and different. Some of them don't care about the Earth. Some of them just want to go home. Some are only joining the fight because they believe it's for the greater good, or etc. And again, as we saw, some of them turn on them because of their mission. These feel like just people who realize that because of their position as these powered individuals, they kind of have no choice but to fight it. Because let's be honest, who else can? Oh yeah, they could go to the Avengers, but I don't think there's a single Avenger that could fight a Celestial. If Tiamat came and tried to fight them, I think even if Thor tried to swing his hammer at them, it'd be like if you threw a pin at a wall, at like a steel girder. It would bounce off it and do nothing, and then you could just swat it away. Or mosquito. I think that's the best appropriate term. He would be mosquito. He'd be an exceedingly powerful mosquito. And even that exceeding amount of power would be nothing. As a result, these people don't feel like superheroes. They feel like people who happen to have these abilities and who realize we have no choice. If we just sit back and do nothing, then what will that make us? And again, what makes it better is the moral conundrum. They can, of course, like we saw with many of them, they think this is the best thing they can do, but at the same time, the best thing to do maybe would be just to do nothing. Let Tiamat come out and let Earth be destroyed, because even if millions will die, billions more will be born because of this sacrifice. But at the same time, do they want to sacrifice innocent civilians and innocent people, especially for a planet they spent centuries on and caring for? Again, it's a great moral conundrum, and it keeps you interested in what they're going to do and how they're going to develop. And it again helps because of the complexities and the characters and and all the conclusions they come to. So I like that. So that plus the cosmic scale of things and everything, and again, of course, because of the complex characters and how they work off each other, I think it's all really damn interesting. Also helps that the acting is really good. We got, okay, I can only remember 3 actors' names in this film, so I apologize for not knowing her name. But Bakari's actor, I think, is really good, showcasing a lot of personality through facial expressions, body movement, she does a great job with what she has. So I like that. And the same and Icarus's actor, again, don't know his name. I apologize. He does a really good job at showing the turmoil that goes into it. Camille Nanjiani, while I think his character is annoying, does a great job at showcasing him trying to be nice and funny while being serious and just the hurt he feels. Cersei, as she registers everything, Fastos as he acts like the cool one. Druid and Druid's actor I think does a great job in showing just how tired he is while still showing the determination in his eyes. Again, it's all really good. Especially, and I guess if you want to go to the villains as well, one of the things that I liked was Bill Skarsgard as the lead deviant. While he may not have a lot of scenes, Bill Skarsgård I think plays creepy well. I liked it. I saw him as Pennywise, and I think he was good in the role. So seeing him here and when he play and when he in the Deviant he plays allowed to be creepy, Bill Skarsgård knows how to make him creepy, especially in a scene where a battle takes him right into a cave and he's stalking Athena and talking about how she's broken, how he can try and put her back together, and you can hear him moving in the cave, but you can't see him. It's creepy, and I love it. But therein lies one of the problems with the movie as well. So for starters, the Deviants. After you learn about Tiamat and the emergence and why the Deviants are created, at best this guy feels like an afterthought. At best, he's a side quest, a thing that the group can deal with if they want to, but otherwise could probably ignore in favor of the greater threat. And for the most part, they do that. They completely ignore the Deviants until the Deviants are pretty much smacking at their doorstep, because they know this battle isn't going to really matter if the world we're fighting over isn't around anymore. So, kind of throwing you on the back burner. And as a result, he doesn't really do a lot as a villain. He's like I said, at best he's a side quest. At worst, a nuisance. Which, okay, to be fair, as nuisances go, he's a pretty big one since he managed to kill 2 of their members and absorb their powers. And with each absorption, he mutated more and got more powerful. So it's clear that they can't let him absorb any more of them. But at the same time, when the big giant cosmic monster is emerging from the planet and threatens to destroy it, at that point you're kind of like, is this guy important anymore? And unfortunately, that's another. So yeah, the Deviants are just kind of throwaway villains at best. So I think that's kind of dumb. Another thing I kind of have a problem with are some character stuff. I already commented in the movie on the complexity of certain characters and how they operate, but for some characters, there are some aspects about them that I don't think are very enduring. I already mentioned how I thought Kingo was annoying because he's meant to be kind of the comedic relief, so to speak, but a lot of his movie-going stuff, a lot of his bio stuff, or him being a filmmaker, or him talking about how when they first got him, and one of the reasons he didn't want to go was because, they just started shooting a new movie and so forth. Like, dude, get your priorities straight. Like, this is an Eternal, right? This is a guy who was charged with protecting the planet against monsters, and this is your big priority? It's kind of annoying, and he keeps doing stuff like that, and it gives the impression that he almost doesn't care about their journey. I say almost because there's enough scenes there to showcase that he does take what they're doing seriously, and I already mentioned how the complexity about him pretty much being a neutral party in the end of the day. But at the same time, when you watch him and this is the character you're showcasing, yeah, I don't think you're really using Camille Nanjiani well here. On top of that, I still don't buy Sprite's redemption at the end. Like, the girl was going to let the planet die just because she didn't have all these, just because she couldn't live her life, because she couldn't have a life like everybody else. Which, to be fair, again, is understandable and sympathetic. But at the same time, I wouldn't be as quick to forgive her. I'd sympathize with her, and maybe I'd think, you can be human, but I think she deserves some kind of punishment. Like, she was willing to let people die and even turn on her friends just because she decided, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to start someplace else. Screw everyone on this planet. And she stabbed Cersei in the gut. I'm sorry. I can't look past a lot of that. There's only so much BS you can take from a character before you say, okay, look, I sympathize with you, but you're kind of the bad guy here. Like, even if someone has a sympathetic backstory, that doesn't excuse a lot of what they do. Just because someone was, like, I guess if I want to use an example, My Hero Academia, the latest movie. The villain had a sympathetic backstory, and you kind of felt sorry for him, but it did not excuse any of what he did. I'm not going to get into spoilers because we're not talking about that movie, but the main villain had a sympathetic backstory. You felt sorry for him, but even in universe, the heroes are like, yeah, but that still doesn't change a lot of what you're doing. And just because your life sucked, that doesn't mean it doesn't justify any of what you do here. And that's kind of a big thing. Just because someone has a sympathetic backstory, that doesn't mean that suddenly everything they've done is forgiven. They still did those things, and they still deserve some punishment. So while Sprite becoming human does sort of make sense, at the same time, I'm also kind of thinking, why does she deserve a happy ending after she willingly just went off with Icarus to let the entire planet die? I'm sorry, but no, I think she deserves more comeuppance than what she got. So, yeah, I'm going to kind of knock that against the movie. And I guess that's also another problem. Sometimes we get informed attributes. Like apparently, Sprite loved Icarus. It's a surprise to everyone else, too. I'm not kidding. The only person that seems to see it is Kingo. And the only reason that we, the audience, know about it is because, again, Kingo pointed it out. Yeah, because, she has positive interactions with Icarus, but nothing to the point where I felt like she loved him. And even at the end of the movie, in the movie when she runs off with Icarus to try and guard Tiamat while he's emerging, Kingo says, they're asking why did she leave with him, and Kingo says because she loved him, and the rest of the group just looks at him like, what? He's like, what? You guys didn't see that? Of course they didn't see it. No one did. The only reason that we know about it is because you pointed it out, Kingo. It's just kind of dumb. And it doesn't really make for interest, and it doesn't really feel, it just kind of feels like an informed attribute that doesn't really add anything to the story. On top of that, speaking of informed attributes, Dane's kind of annoying. Well, not really annoying, but he's not really in the movie. He's in there, and it's clear he's only there to set up a future film, which when I first saw this film, I was ready to just call him a superfluous character, because he only is there in the beginning. He's there to get the secret revealed to him, and then he's absent for like the majority of the movie until the end. But like I said, I almost called him useless character if it wasn't for the stuff with the ebony blade, because yeah, that's the blade he was given at the end, the ebony blade, which is supposed to be the blade of another Marvel character called the Black Knight, which, whatever that is, I think it's going to be awesome. Looks cool. I want to see more of that. But he was just kind of useless in the movie. So aside from the setup for the Black Knight stuff, he feels superfluous. I'm trying to think, because there was more stuff that kind of got under my skin a little. There were scenes and like there felt like despite like the action, of course, does still of course there's the CGI. I guess maybe you could say that the Deviants were problematic. Hold on, I know I took notes on this. There was stuff in here that I do remember kind of thinking, what the hell on. I don't know. I suppose another problem I feel like could be maybe the Eternals outfits. Yeah, that's another thing. I don't like the superhero outfits. They have uniforms. They look bland. I think the best thing I can do is that I describe them as I wrote them down here. They look like Power Rangers outfits, and that's not a compliment. They all look generic and bland, and they're all color-coded, obviously, for different members, and it feels weird, so I think that's kind of dumb. I'm trying to think, though, because I remember there were more things I wanted to point out. There were more, even during the summary, I kept thinking to myself, well, why didn't they do this, or why didn't they do that, etc. It's just, I don't know. It's like there are aspects of the film that do kind of get to me a little, like informed attributes or superfluous characters, or the fact that these are one other thing that definitely annoyed me: how the Eternals are supposed to help humanity along. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think it's kind of a little dumb, because part of what made the Eternals like Earth in the movie was the fact that these people are so enduring, that there's such variety to them, and that they seem to have something to them that's like a spirit, something that can keep them going. And yet, the idea is that the Eternals keep coming in and are just guiding them from the shadows. Fastos was the one that apparently got humanity to the point where they got to Hiroshima? No, I'm like, what? No. Like, why can't humanity have all these accomplished by themselves? Why does why do the Eternals have to be the ones that guide us to that? Because they're the basis for our mythologies? No, that's kind of a little dumb. On top of that, so I think that was kind of annoying, and I kind of don't like I think that kind of is a weird implication, especially since it kind of feels a little contradictory to what their mission was. They're not supposed to interfere with human affairs, and yet they're clearly able to interfere with other stuff. They can't deal with human conflicts, but they can still interact with humans. Like, if you don't want I feel like that's counterintuitive, because if you want the Eternals to just be there to make sure that your Celestial doesn't wake up, shouldn't it be that they shouldn't be interacting with the humans, period, beyond the bare essentials? Like, I feel like that should have been a mission parameter. At the very least, maybe push them in the right direction if they were starting to be slacking. But otherwise, maybe they should have a hands-off policy, period. Just not get involved at all. Just deal with the Deviants when they pop up, and then just amscray when things get out of hand. Because I feel like that should have been the better priority. And I feel like that would have avoided a lot of conflict if that had been... I forgot his name again. Arishem's plan. If he just told them, deal with these things, but be hands off. So, I don't know. It feels like that's another major conflict. Just having them be there at all, interacting with people. Maybe you should have told them, stay together, stay away from the humans, only go near them when you have to defend them from the Deviants. Like, that should have been like a thing. And if Arishem created them to essentially fight off against the Deviants, why did he put personalities in them? Why did he do this? Shouldn't the whole why did he make it so they could all be like this at all? Because they're clearly supposed to, because he clearly created them so they wouldn't change, so they'd fight the Deviants. If the whole point of them existing was to fight the Deviants, why give them pasts? Why give them personalities? Wouldn't it have been better if they were just like androids or something? Like, just send them in, do a mission, and then back off? I feel like that would have been a lot more... I feel like that would have been a lot better. As well as he could have installed some human quality... Like, installed some personality quirks and qualities, because I'm guessing part of why he added personalities to the Eternals at all was so that they could interact with people and they could trust them and be more welcoming towards them when they show up and fight off the monsters. Because after all, why would you want to trust the people who have all these intricate powers? Because they could be just as bad as the things that were just trying to kill you. So I suppose that would make sense, but at the same time, I feel like that's still just only superficial stuff. You could have just made them just straight up weirdos in costumes with only the barest of personalities and pulled them back. So why did he do that? Because we need to have a movie, of course. So, yeah, the more you think about that, the more of a problem it becomes, and the more it kind of pulls the whole movie apart. And I'm starting to see why critics didn't like it, which... yeah, I kind of see about that, because the instant you start thinking more about that, the more you start poking holes in it. Now, again, that does not ruin the movie for me, because even with that in mind, there's still a lot about this movie that I think really friggin' works. Like I said, the action is really damn impressive and fun to watch. The scale is so much grander that it doesn't even feel like a superhero movie. Like, it feels such a cosmic scale, even bigger than Infinity War, admittedly, because of the Celestials and their involvement. The tone, which I didn't talk about, the tone I think is really nice. It actually is treated seriously. The threat, the characters and their interactions. There are jokes thrown in there, but not as many as you would expect from a Marvel movie, which I think actually works to the film's advantage, as it keeps things more focused and more character-driven. And some jokes that they typically have are usually characters interacting with each other and trying to get a rise out of the other, but not either because they're annoyed by them or because this is just their dynamic, which I think makes a lot of sense considering what's going on in the story. So I'm gonna give you that one. I think that one worked. So I like that too. I think the tone is another positive to this movie. And like I said, the acting is great. The action is amazing. The scale feels so amazing. It feels so spectacular. The characters are all well written and complex and have a lot more to them. Their powers are all unique and varied. I believe them as a super team, and I love seeing them fighting with each other or against each other. And the ending, I think, really does pave the way for future films, because I'm definitely interested. I want to see more with these characters. I want to see more of them as they expose what they are to the rest of the Eternals. How can they deal with going up against the Celestials, who are their literal creators? I want to see more of them interacting and seeing how they develop from here. I want to see more of the Eternals, because they are an awesome team. They are so awesome. Their actors are awesome. They're well written. I want to see where they go from here. And I felt that way even when I first saw the movie. I want to see more of these characters. It's just that when you try and stop and think about the basic premise of the Eternals, that they're just supposed to be there to defend Earth from these monsters, and then they're just supposed to sit back and let this thing arise. It just kind of makes you wonder, then why even have personalities at all? Why do all these things? Why get involved with human affairs at all? And I feel like that could have been a major reason for why critics got so negative about this movie. Because when you try and stop and think about the basic premise for even a little bit, it falls apart. And that's bad. That's just bad. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it definitely still rears up in my mind, and I don't like that. I don't really like that. And it sucks that I'm thinking about it now after I saw the movie, because I still think the movie is great. It does have its flaws, again. Informed attributes. The premise, I think, is, if you think too hard on it, definitely makes you go, what the hell? It makes you go, oh, come on. Come on. The Deviants feel like superficial villains. Sometimes characters feel like they have attributes that are told to us rather than anything. Kingo can be sometimes annoying, and sometimes the jokes don't always land, but even with Kingo being annoying, he's still a complex character, and so I'm not going to hate him. Again, Camille Nanjiani, if you ever see this, I love you, man. You're awesome. Please don't hate me. I still think you're a great actor. I think you did great in this one, and I don't hate Kingo. I just think that there are aspects of him that they're just aspects of him that get on my nerves. Please don't hate me, dude. I love your work. Please don't hate me. So, yeah, like I said, so what makes me love this movie? Complex characters, great action, grand scale, complex issues, cool team dynamics. And ultimately, all those factors combined, I think, do make this a really good movie, but the problems are still evident, and the more you think about them, the more you start to kind of poke more holes in the premise, and the more you start to realize, oh god, this movie's got problems. And as a result of this, I can kind of see why the film's kind of gotten the varied reactions it has, because there's a lot to love about it. I love seeing these characters, and I want to see more about them. It's just that when you think about the basic premise behind the characters, it definitely starts to make you scratch your head more and more until eventually you realize, oh, this didn't need to happen at all. So, yeah, I can weigh both sides, and I can kind of see why the film got the reactions it has. Again, I still really love the movie. I still want to see more about these characters, and I still think it's a fun ride from beginning to end. It definitely feels out there in terms of MCU films, but that's out there in the good way. It definitely feels so drastically different from other MCU films. Feels like it exists in its own other world, which, to be honest, I think is what the Eternals is usually supposed to be. When they were introduced in Marvel, they were not part of the They were not part of the Marvel universe proper. They were their own thing, and it took a miniseries by Neil Gaiman to finally bring them into the universe proper. So them being kind of detached from the rest of the Marvel universe, I think, works to their advantage, because it feels like this is their own little world. And while they're still connected to the MCU, until we finally see them with other characters, they feel like they exist in their own little bubble, which I think is a good thing. Which I think is a good thing, as it can keep them more individualized until we get to major team-ups later down the line. So, yeah, repeating my points here. Thought it was really awesome. Well-written, complex characters, good acting, great action, very complex issues very complex issues, amazing tone. Amazing tone, both with grandness and both with how grand it was and how serious it could be. But again, some characteristics I think were kind of annoying. Some attributes I think could have been showcased better. The basic premise kind of falls apart when you stop and think about it too hard. And sometimes I feel like, I suppose there could be some times that things are started a little too fast. In the beginning, I really didn't care. When Icarus showed up, I really didn't think, wow, Icarus, I don't know anything about this character. And it wasn't until we saw flashbacks that I got a sense of who he was. So, yeah, at the end of the day, still really like this movie. I do highly recommend you see it. But at the same time, don't think too hard about the premise like I did. It'll probably ruin the movie for you. And I don't think this movie should be ruined. It's a fun ride from beginning to end. but I think I can understand why why the critics definitely lambasted it. So again, yeah, liked the movie. Aspects of it that could have been worked on. That's all. So yeah, I think that's about it. If you stayed this long, thank you for watching. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Just tell me why you disagree with me in the comments. Just remember to be respectful. Remember we have different opinion. Remember we have different opinions, but that doesn't make us enemies. Just try to be respectful and nice. So yeah, I think that's all I can say. Liked the movie. Aspects of it could have been better. Still think it's really good. But so yeah. So yeah. Next week we're gonna start a brand new vlog. But the next time we venture back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're gonna be checking in on a certain webbed wonder as we see him enter the multiverse in Spider-Man: No Way Home.